if you've been suffering, if your sales are down for 2 months now, and you're probably already feeling some urgency around repositioning, like putting things on sale, maybe, adjusting the way that you do business for a little bit. You're not going to wait 6 months to see if some economists like put a word on the thing that you're going through. You want to actually base your decisions off what is happening in your life, your client's life, your world, right? So take the word recession with a grain of salt.
Welcome to the Sunlight Podcast. In this show, we're talking about taxes, money, and careers for creative people who have a big vision for changing the world with their work. I'm your host, Hannah Cole, artist, tax pro, and the founder of Sunlight Tax. If you're an artist, designer, or creative entrepreneur who wants to grow your business sustainably, manage your taxes, and build a stash of fuck you money so you can control your own time and have a bigger impact with your work, you are in the right place.
Hello and welcome. I am coming to you today from a business retreat that I'm on. It's a really wonderful place. I'm in Folly Beach, South Carolina. So if you are watching the video version of this, you'll see it behind me. So this morning, I had an experience that made me want to talk about something today on the podcast. I was walking on the beach here in South Carolina, and I'm studying up on Series I bonds from the US Treasury. And it kind of occurred to me as I'm looking into these things, there's reasons that I'm doing it. And then I thought, oh, this is a good podcast. I should explain why I am currently deep diving into Series I bonds. So let me give you some background about why I'm doing that. Basically, I want to give you a sense of what I see going on right now in the markets globally and in the US, how that might affect you as a person who works for yourself, who has your own business or is freelance, and what you might need to know in order to make the most of the situation that we are currently in, and just to get a sense of what the fuck is going on. All right, so let's get started. There's a lot going on right now in the global markets. It's just a lot. This is kind of a first for me, but I want to give you a sense of what's happening globally, so that you kind of see your place in the global ecosystem at this moment. It is something that I want to just explore with you, the idea that when you have, there's seagulls kind of contributing to our podcast here today, the sounds of the ocean. So when you have a basic personal finance education, which, many of us did not get growing up, especially if you were a socialized female, or if you grew up BIPOC, if you're from an immigrant family, you may not have had the resources or access to have had an education like this. And nor did you have maybe accountants or financial planners in your family orbit growing up, right? So it can be confusing when you start hearing terms thrown around like recession, inflation, interest rates, the Fed. What does this all mean, and why should you care, right? Like how does it actually affect you, a small business owner? And I just want to illustrate for you through myself that when you actually have a sense of your personal finance, you kind of know where you're at, you know what the basic personal finance rules are, and you feel comfortable making basic investment decisions, then you can take information about things like the global markets, interest rates, possible impending recession, and you can actually take actions or make minor adjustments to your course. And let's be clear, that's really what I'm talking about, because I think any sound investment plan is a long-term plan, is a long-term safe strategy, as safe as you can make a thing that has some inherent risk in it. And so I'm not talking about like, oh my God, sell everything. No. Never. What I'm talking about is how can you use information about what's going on globally right now and make little course corrections, right? That's really what we're talking about. We're talking about adjusting, not throwing everything overboard. So there's a lot of power in this, right? There's a whole lot of power that you can have when you have this information. So let me help you get there. So let's talk about the market. What is going on? First of all, recession. You've probably kind of heard a rumble that maybe we're in a recession, maybe we're heading towards a recession. There's fear about a recession. Maybe we're already in one, maybe we're not. Why does that matter to you? And is it even relevant? Basically, it's not even clear that we are in a recession yet, but I will define what a recession actually is and what it is not. But then let's talk about if you should even care, right? Because that's important. So first of all, a recession it's kind of fuzzy what the definition of a recession is. The actual decision about whether or not we're in a recession is a decision that is come to through the consensus of 8 federal economists in the US. Okay. So that is actually what makes the defines whether or not we're in a recession. Now, you may have heard, if you listen to Marketplace or, if you read the newspaper, you may have heard people talking about recession, and they're using what seems to be a different baseline, which is if we've had 2 quarters of negative growth, in other words, of markets going down. That is kind of the layperson's definition of a recession. It's not the technical definition, but it's a fairly good estimation of whether or not we're in a recession here in the US. Okay, so just FYI, there's kind of 2 different baselines here. It's really important to know that recessions are only declared retroactively. So this is why whether or not that word actually technically applies to where we're at right now is actually not super relevant to you, because 2 quarters of negative growth means for 6 months we've already been in this situation, right? It brings to mind that old joke about economics, like economists can't predict the future because they can barely even predict the past. Like, that's the thing. Like, who cares? For 6 months you've been suffering. You need somebody to tell you that. Like, you're the one who knows, right? If you've been suffering, if your sales are down for 2 months now, and you're probably already feeling some urgency around repositioning, like putting things on sale, maybe, adjusting the way that you do business for a little bit. You're not going to wait 6 months to see if some economists put a word on the thing that you're going through. You want to actually base your decisions off what is happening in your life, your client's life, your world, right? So take the word recession with a grain of salt right off the bat. If you want to know some deeper stuff about recession, I actually just recently did a whole class on recession just 2 months ago. It's called How to Thrive in a Recession. And yes, I think that's really important. There are some upsides to recession, especially in investing, but also in sort of marketing and positioning your business to survive well through and thrive through a recession. So I made that class freely available, free. You don't even have to, give up your email to get it. It's just on YouTube. So if you just go to the Sunlight Tax YouTube channel, you can find it there. I'll also put a link to that in the show notes. So just FYI, there's a whole lot more information that I have out there about recessions if you want to learn about that. So baseline is we are probably in a recession. There's some risk of a recession coming up, and I'm going to talk about that. On the horizon, what is going on? Okay, well, one thing here in the US, inflation has been rising. Inflation rates have been going up. What does that mean? How does that affect you? Inflation basically eats away the value of a dollar, right? So effectively, what that means to you is super low interest rate, which is what most banks are currently offering. So your money is not staying at the same level of value. The number of dollars in the account may stay the same, but the value of those dollars is actually decreasing over time as inflation eats away the value of them. Inflation causes the cost of goods to go up because people have to charge more for their products if the value they're getting for those dollars is lessening, right? So prices start rising when we're in an inflationary period. It's also important to know that the only way to beat inflation is by investing your money. So investing inherently involves some risk. Now, it's calculated risk, and it's very important that you educate yourself about a basic, sound, long-term investment strategy. We're not talking get-rich-quick schemes. Anytime you add in desperation to your investments, you are ripe for scam. So I just want to caution you when it comes to investing. But investing involves small amounts of risk, and that is actually how you get a higher return on your dollar. So that is important for your long-term financial security. In fact, it's a key ingredient in basic personal finance. You must invest some dollars today because that is the path to long-term financial security and actually building financial security, building wealth, building generational wealth. Investing is also a higher rate of return and it is high enough usually to beat the rate of inflation. So inflationary periods really kind of force you to do what I hope you've already been doing, which is investing. It's really, really important to know the fundamentals, though, of investing. What is the federal government doing about inflation? This is important. The Federal Reserve has one tool, and it's a fairly blunt instrument that it can use to help curb inflation. That tool is interest rates. The Federal Reserve sets interest rates for our country. So this means this is the interest rate, basically the cost of borrowing money, right? When interest rates are really low, the economic forces make it really appealing to take out loans because money is cheap. And so businesses will tend to borrow a lot of money, make big investments, and then grow their businesses, right? This is like an exciting, wonderful thing. Lowering interest rates has the effect of causing more people to borrow money and put investments into their business, and it kind of juices the economy. Now, when we're in an inflationary period, which we definitely are now, the Fed can go the other way and they can raise interest rates. And what this basically does is take away the proverbial punch bowl at the party, right? It makes people sort of slow down, slow down their borrowing, slow their roll, kind of back off things so that this hot economy with lots of money moving around kind of slows down. And this will tend to depress the prices of things, stop all that money moving around, and basically, hopefully, curb inflation, right? Bring it back down again. Now, the problem is it's not a scalpel, right? It's more of a hammer. And so when they do this, there's a risk that a recession will be triggered, right? That we will enter into a recession because they will slow growth too much, that people will stop spending too much, right? We're trying to slow it, but not stop it, right? So it's a little bit blunt force and it's hard to control. So there's lots of talk about, interest rates, inflation, the Fed. And as I'm recording this episode right now, it is Wednesday, September 21st, when I am recording this. The Fed is in day 2 of a 2-day meeting setting new interest rates. Everybody's predicting that the interest rates are going to go up. We think it will be a 0.75% interest rate hike. Okay. It's kind of more than it's been in the past. So that's a substantial interest rate increase. What does that actually mean to you? Why should you care that the Fed is raising interest rates? And hey, I'm recording this September 21st. Maybe they'll do a different number than what we think it is. And we'll see. We'll see if I was wrong or right. Why does it matter? What effect does this have on you? Well, when interest rates go up, it means the cost of borrowing money goes up. Right? Mortgage rates are going to go up. So if you're trying to buy a house, you will find that your mortgage costs more. Cost of borrowing in other places, your car loan is going to go. If you try to get a car now, the car loan rate that you get is going to go higher. If you do a balance transfer on your credit card, that interest rate is going to be higher than it would have been a month ago. So it's really important. This will affect you. Companies in general are going to pass on the raised interest rates that they have to the consumer, and that is you. I also just wanted to throw in a little fact. I believe it was FedEx. It was one of the big package companies. I think it's FedEx. Actually had a little preview before their third quarter meeting that their shipping had declined in a bigger way than expected. And just FYI, that is actually an early indicator that people generally in the US are buying less. So, interest rates are going up, people are buying less. In this zone, we get a little bit nervous that maybe a recession is a possibility, okay? All right, housing. How does this affect housing? Now, not all of you are buying a house right now or selling a house right now, but if you are, just a little tidbit on that piece is that it should be that housing prices, which I think we can all agree have gone a little bananas in the past couple years, housing prices surprisingly, despite the fact that mortgage rates are going up and that should slow the buying of houses, housing prices themselves are not dropping. This is a little funky. Why is that happening? That's actually happening because there's not enough inventory. There just are not enough houses on the market. And, basic principle of economics is supply and demand. If the supply is limited and there isn't enough for all the buyers who want the thing will stay expensive, or it will become even more expensive. So there's kind of two forces pulling in opposite directions on housing right now. There are interest rates going up, making mortgages more expensive, which is cooling off the housing market, but rates of housing are not coming down as much as you might want because we just don't have enough housing, period. Let's talk about our friends in Europe. What's happening in Europe right now? As you know, Russia and Ukraine are at war at the moment. And recently, Russia pulled out the big guns and it cut off the supply of its gas to Europe. Now, Europe was not energy independent. It did depend, at least in part, on Russian gas. So something that's been happening in Europe economically is that energy rates in Europe have increased dramatically, like really dramatically. Some reports of absolutely bananas costs on heating homes. Now, people are getting really worried about this because it's, summer's ending. We're getting into the fall now, and we're looking at a long, cold winter with very expensive fuel costs in Europe. So, of course, European banks are doing everything they can, and European governments are doing everything they can to stop this. But there's a very good chance that there is going to be a recession, possibly a bad one, in Europe. Okay, when I look, just to bring this down to the level of an individual investor, so we're going to use me as an example here. Me personally, so I really try to set my investments and forget them. I do not look at them much. I do not move my money around very much. I pretty much buy and hold, but I have basically my money in a couple different buckets of index funds. One of them is largely US based and the other is global. And I will tell you right now, taking a look at the global one, it has gone down substantially in the last year. So that is what started me kind of looking down the rabbit hole at what's going on in Europe. That's just a little a little note. I like to know what's happening. Is it time to freak out, right? Do you have to freak out about what's going on? No, not at all. First of all, go ahead and watch that recession class on YouTube. It has lots of ways that you can actually benefit from recession. It's not all bad news. So there's that. And just to give you a little summary, when stock prices drop, it puts a pit in your stomach. There are feelings involved, no question. But once you have kind of weathered a recession or two in your life, you start to realize oh, this is what happens. This is the cycle. This is normal. A good investment strategy doesn't change because of a recession. It stays the same because it always accounted for the fact that recessions just happen, right? They are normal. So am I doing anything different? Not really. I like to take advantage of the fact that stocks went on sale. So, when stock prices drop, you can buy them for cheaper, right? So it's awful to look at your existing portfolio and see that those share prices have dropped, but you do have an upside in that you can make new investments at a cheap rate. I don't generally advise timing the market, so I'm going to put an asterisk on that. But I will say that I do like to buy in a recession when I have the cash. And here's just a little example of why, when you have good cash flow, good personal finance sort of system set up, having some cash that you can do these things with is pretty amazing. Now, I know I certainly was not in a position to do any of this 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. It has taken me a pretty long time, frankly, to build up this kind of financial security, which of course I'm trying to increase every day that I can and teach you how to do as well. Diversification is really important, right? This is one piece that you need to know in a basic investment strategy. You want to have your holdings diversified. Now, in my program, Money Bootcamp, I talk at great length about diversification, what it means, a basic strategy. But generally speaking, when I say that, what I mean is you want a mix of stocks and bonds. There's other ways to diversify too, but we're going to go with that one at the moment. So what typically happens economically is that in a moment of, impending recession, companies slow down, interest rates go up, we're having all of those things right now, stock prices and the market are going to tend to come down. So the return on the investment short term in the stock market is going down. This is why a well-balanced portfolio is going to have a little bit of bonds in it. So bonds kind of increase in value, slow and steady. The stock market increases and then will drop, increases and will drop, and it will have really sharp rises and sharp declines with the overall trajectory that is upward, which is why you always want to be investing in stocks as a long-term strategy and not a short-term one. But there is what is called a flight to safety when the markets are tanking. People will tend to buy bonds because in a bond, at least you know you're not going to lose your money. This brings me to Series I bonds issued by the US Treasury. You cannot get these anywhere but direct from the US government via the US Treasury. You can actually get them with your refund. You can check a box on your tax return. They can do that because, you pay your check, you pay your taxes to the US Treasury and vice versa. You can just ask for that money to go directly to I bonds. I'm not going to talk to you about what I bonds are or how they work at this point because I'm still doing my research, right? I don't feel like I understand them well enough, all the ins and outs, to be able to teach them to you. I'm trying to get up on them myself, but I'm interested in them because, just as I have a lot of money in stocks and I'm just thinking, maybe I want to make a bond purchase. I haven't done one in a long time. Series I bonds have a historically high rate of return at the moment. And so I'm interested in them. I'm interested in doing my research. I like to follow what Warren Buffett says. If you don't know Warren Buffett, he is a truly deeply ethical person, which is why I appreciate following him. But he is, a major stock investor who's done incredibly well. Basically, people who trade worship him because he's so wise and he has made a ton of money on the stock market. But he has a rule of thumb, which I find very valuable, which is never invest in something you don't completely understand. So the reason that I'm interested in them right now is because there is a rate change for the I bonds coming November 1st. So this is kind of a moment of decision for me. Do I want to put money into those before the rate change November 1st or not? So that's what I'm going through.
This brings me to you. So I have a basic understanding of how markets work. And on the personal level, I have a basic understanding of basic personal finance. So I now know where to look when big things happen in the market and when I have the cash to hedge my bets and take advantage of what is happening. Now, of course, I do want to also just remind you that the best investment strategy under any circumstance is still very, very simple. Essentially, you want to implement it once, make small, minor adjustments on a regular basis, but essentially never touch it. In fact, there's really, really good evidence that the most conservative investors do better than people who are very active. So, for example, the portfolios of dead people have been shown to outperform the portfolios of people who are living. Why? Because set it and forget it is actually the wisest investment strategy, period. So it's not about listening to the news and reacting. Absolutely not. But I am talking about a unique moment happening right at this minute where there is an interest rate that is about to go into effect for this kind of bonds, and it has a historically high rate of return. And the markets are all sort of pointing to this being a good moment to potentially make an I bond purchase. So I'm talking about having the power and the ability to make decisions like that and take advantage of a good situation. So I started Sunlight Tax to help creative people with the one money thing that they cannot avoid. I started it to help with your taxes because taxes are the one time that every creative person has to face their money, right? As I run a tax practice, stemming from taxes are all kinds of other related financial decisions. And over time, I came to learn that creative people really need all of that other information as well. You don't just need your annual tax return filed. You need some knowledge about what the tax benefits are of fully funding your IRA, or what the alternatives to an IRA are, or additional retirement savings that you can get and other kinds of tax advantage savings.
And that I wanted to create a place where creative people could get this information, even though you often don't have an accountant or a financial advisor. So I built a program called Money Bootcamp that basically has this information. The purpose of it is to teach in plain language that recognizes the incredible value that you as a creative person bring to the world, how to manage your taxes, set up your bookkeeping, set up your business, understand personal finance, understand a basic investing strategy. And these things are really important because they give you financial control and they give you financial sustainability for the long term. They're not overwhelmingly difficult, but usually creative people really struggle to find good information here because we feel so alienated from the people who are usually delivering it. And we can often feel really judged in those contexts. Now, I have really restructured this program in the last year because I really want it to serve people as well as it can and meet you where you are. And I've been listening to a lot of feedback about the program and trying to improve it based on where you are right now. So a lot of people have told me that price feels like a more important factor at this moment than a lot of personalized attention or live sessions. And so I restructured the program to take that into account. So whereas Money Bootcamp used to be a membership program that had ongoing support and I needed to hire staff in order to handle the emails and customer support, and we had monthly sessions, Zoom links, all of that stuff, it's a lot simpler and less expensive for me to deliver a self-study course. So I have restructured it to a self-study course so that I don't need to provide all that support, and therefore I can charge quite a bit less. So I was able to take the price of Money Bootcamp down to less than half of what it was at its peak as a membership. And I also want to recognize that sometimes you do need support and sometimes you don't. And so one thing that I did was, instead of packaging one-on-one support into a membership program, I decoupled it. So what that means is you can buy Money Bootcamp as a self-study course, as a self-study program now, and there's a link inside the program to book one-on-one time with me for a small additional fee on an as-needed basis. So it is really important sometimes to get eyes on your specific situation to help connect the material that you're learning with your questions and make sure that it applies to you in the way that you think it does. And some people need a lot of this and some people really don't. So I wanted to price it in a way where if you don't need the support, you don't have to pay for it. And if you want a lot of support, you can absolutely opt into that, but that you're not pre-booking a bunch of stuff you never use. You just do it as you need it. So those are some ways that I have tried to adjust the program to really be helpful and responsive to your needs in this moment and in this time where economics have kind of changed and our world feels a little less certain. Now, we're getting into the time of year where I start getting really busy and I start making major programs and changes in the program and studying the new tax laws and putting out stuff on that. And I just wanted to offer to all of you a one-time sale to honor this moment of financial jitters that I think a lot of you are going through right now. Now, I usually, if you've been following Sunlight Tax for a while, you know that I don't give discounts. And so this is incredibly rare. I do give bonuses, but I don't usually discount my program. So this is the one and only discount that will happen through this entire tax season. And it's for $200 off the program. And it's just a flash sale. It's before I get really busy. And it is starts today and will be good through Friday. So there's no sale for the rest of the year. I'm really hoping that this sale meets you where you are in a moment where you need the info, because I'm here to serve you. So it is really my wish to give you objective and sympathetic financial education, that you may never have gotten before from a fellow creator who gets you. So here's how you get the sale. If you're interested, if you've been interested in joining Money Bootcamp, if you've just learned about it and you want to check it out, You can go to the sales page, which is sunlighttax.com/moneybootcampsales. That's all one word. So sunlighttax.com/moneybootcampsales. And the $200 off will be automatically applied. As always, I have a paid in full option that offers you an additional discount. And then also there's a payment plan. You can break the payment up into 3 monthly payments. The $200 discount will be applied to either one that you choose. You can choose whichever option is the best for you. And so long as you join Money Bootcamp between now, when you're listening to this, and midnight on Friday, September 30th, then you will get that one-time only discount on the program of $200. There's no webinar for you to watch, no email follow-ups. This is a very simple, simple setup here. You just go straight to that page. sunlighttax.com/moneybootcampsales. Pick if you want to pay in full or do the payment plan. Also at that site, you can read very thoroughly all of the stuff that's involved in Money Bootcamp. You can read a bunch of different case studies. There's all the info you could want if you want to really deep dive on what is in the program and get your questions answered. And I hope to see you on the inside. Thanks so much for listening today, everybody. And I wish you some strength and courage in this slightly scary moment. Thanks.
Thank you for listening. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review. It really helps, and share it with a friend. I'm so grateful. This podcast is for education and entertainment only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as individual tax or financial advice. You can find all the tools, books, and links we reference at sunlighttax.com/podcast.